Hey everyone, you know how it is out there in the world these days. Just so much information coming at you from all sides.
It really is a constant fire hose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially for folks like our listeners,
Mm.
always eager to learn something new. But wouldn't it be amazing if there was a way to kind of streamline that whole process?
Yeah,
You know, learn smarter, not harder.
absolutely.
Well, that's what we're going to dig into today, this paper. Inner Thinking Transformer, leveraging dynamic depth scaling to foster adaptive internal thinking.
Sounds a little intimidating, I know.
It does, a mouthful.
But trust me, it's super fascinating. It's all about how AI is evolving to process information more efficiently. And believe it or not, there are some pretty powerful takeaways for us humans, too.
Yeah, it's really a shift in perspective, moving away from just bigger, more powerful AI models. This research looks at teaching AI to think deeper, you
Hmm.
know, like we do when we're faced with a really tough problem.
Okay. Color me intrigued. So, what's the problem with the way AI currently tackles information? I mean, we've all seen how impressive these large language models can be, the LLMs. Right. LLMs have come a long way, but they often rely on this kind of brute force approach. Massive amounts of data, huge processing power,
Just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks?
pretty much. And while that works to a point, we start to see diminishing returns,
Mm.
like trying to solve a puzzle by just throwing more and more pieces at it. Eventually, it becomes less about strategy and more about just sheer volume.
So it's not just about the size of the model then, it's how it actually uses its resources.
Hmm.
Ooh, I can already see how this might apply to my own work. Tell me more.
Exactly. So what's really interesting here is that researchers noticed something about how these LLMs process information. They saw that easy information, like simple words or phrases, the models handle those really quickly, no problem. But when they hit something complex, something that needs more thought, that's when they get bogged down, almost like hitting a mental roadblock.
Interesting. So instead of just smoothly processing everything, the AI is actually struggling, kind of like when I'm trying to learn something new and my brain just feels fried.
That's a great analogy. And that struggle, that's what sparked the idea behind the inner thinking transformer, the RTT.
Okay.
The idea is, what if we could design an AI that recognizes which information needs more attention and then allocates its resources accordingly, like a mental triage system?
Okay, that makes sense. So how does the ITT actually work? What makes it different from all these other AI models out there?
Well, it's got these three key components,
Yeah.
and they all work together to create a more focused, efficient thinking process.
Lay them on me.
Okay, so the first one is called adaptive token routing. And basically, this acts like a filter. It helps the AI figure out which pieces of information need to be fast tracked,
Yeah.
send on for deeper processing.
So it's prioritizing the important stuff,
Yeah.
making sure the AI focuses its energy on what really matters. Kind of like when we're trying to learn a new skill, we focus on mastering those core concepts first, right?
Precisely. And once the ITT had identified those key pieces of information, it uses something called residual thinking connections.
Residual thinking connections. Okay, that sounds a little complicated.
It might sound technical, but the concept is actually pretty simple. Imagine you're reading a really dense paragraph in a book. You might read it once, get the gist. But to really understand it, you need to go back, reread it a few times. That's essentially what residual thinking connections let the AI do. Process the same information multiple times, each time refining its understanding a little bit more.
It's like giving the AI the chance to really mull things over, dig deep and extract the meaning. And that's pretty cool. And I could definitely see how that could be useful for us humans too. How many times have we had to revisit a concept before it really clicks, you know?
Exactly. It's not just about processing something once, it's about revisiting it, building on that understanding with each pass. That's what makes the ITT so efficient. It's not just thinking harder, it's thinking smarter.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
Adaptive token routing helps prioritize. Residual thinking connections give it the chance to really wrestle with those important concepts. What's the third component?
The third one is called thinking step encoding. Essentially, each time the AI thinks about a piece of information, it tags that thought.
Mhm.
This allows it to keep track of its own thought process, like leaving a breadcrumb trail, kind of like having a mental notebook where it can go back and see how it arrived at a particular conclusion.
So it's not just thinking, it's actually learning from how it thinks. That's incredible.
Right. It's like having this built-in system for reflection and analysis. And this helps the AI refine its thinking process over time, making it even more efficient,
Wow.
adaptable.
Okay. I am definitely seeing the parallels to human learning here. This is fascinating. But the real question is, does this actually work? Can the ITT actually outperform these larger, more powerful models? And more importantly, what can we as humans learn from it?
That's what we'll dive into next, and the results are pretty inspiring to say the least. So before the break, we were digging into those three key components of the inner thinking transformer: the adaptive token routing, residual thinking connections, and that thinking step encoding.
Right? All working together to help the AI, you know, prioritize information and think more deeply, just like we do when we're really trying to wrap our heads around something complex.
Yeah.
But the big question is, does it actually work?
Well, the results are pretty remarkable. The ITT consistently outperformed the standard transformers, even those with specific mechanisms for iterative processing.
Hmm.
It was especially impressive on those tasks that required complex reasoning. Imagine that. And AI that can actually think things through.
That's pretty wild. But what does that actually mean for us? For those of us out here in the real world trying to make sense of things and achieve our goals.
Well, one of the most exciting things about this research is that the ITT achieved these results with fewer parameters than the other models,
Fewer parameters.
meaning it's more efficient, potentially needs less computing power, fewer resources.
So it's not just about being smarter. It's about being leaner, more streamlined. Almost like a minimalist approach to AI. And that efficiency could make it more accessible for a wider range of applications, right?
Absolutely. And get this, it even achieves similar performance with less training data.
Whoa. So less data, more learning. That's definitely a philosophy I can get behind. It's like finding that shortcut to knowledge we were talking about earlier.
Hmm.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this translates to my own life, my own work.
Okay, think of it this way. The ITT demonstrates the power of focused, iterative thinking. It's not about just consuming more information or working longer hours. It's about how you strategically allocate your mental resources.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by a massive to-do list or a mountain of research, you can take a cue from the ITT. Prioritize what's truly important. Focus on those difficult tokens, like you call them.
Exactly. Identify those core concepts, those tasks that are going to have the biggest impact, and then dedicate your energy to really understanding them. Just like the ITT uses those residual thinking connections to revisit information multiple times, we can benefit from revisiting challenging topics problems, letting our understanding deepen over time.
It's like the old saying, sleep on it. Sometimes you have to step away, come back to something with fresh eyes to have that aha moment. We're essentially giving our brains those residual connections, right?
Precisely. And just like the ITT tags its thoughts, that thinking step encoding, we can benefit from documenting our process, you know,
Yeah.
noting insights, challenges as we work through something.
Keeping a log.
Yeah, it allows us to reflect on our approach, learn from our mistakes, refine our thinking strategies.
It's like creating a mental map of our thought process. And that can be super valuable, especially when you face similar challenges down the road. It's almost like we're training our own inner thinking transformers. This is all starting to feel really empowering. It's like we have this untapped potential to think smarter, not harder.
And that's really the beauty of this research. It's not just about advancing AI, it's about inspiring us to think differently about our own cognitive processes. It's about recognizing that depth and focus can be way more powerful than just sheer scale.
So if we could actually apply these principles, these ITT principles to our own lives, what might that look like? Can you give us some concrete examples?
Sure. Let's say you're working on a complex project.
Okay.
Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, you could start by identifying those difficult tokens, those core challenges or decisions that are going to have the biggest impact on the project.
So like a project manager for your brain, figuring out which tasks are the VIPs, the ones that need to be fast-tracked.
Exactly. And then, just like the ITT uses those residual thinking connections, you can schedule dedicated time to revisit those core challenges, maybe even break them down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah.
Give yourself time to process, to reflect. Let your brain make those connections.
And of course, don't forget to document your thinking process as you go. Those insights, those breakthroughs, even those moments of frustration, they can all be incredibly valuable down the line.
Right. It's like keeping a learning journal for your project. You might even discover patterns in your thinking, strengths and weaknesses you weren't even aware of before. And hey, who knows? Maybe you'll stumble upon a brilliant solution while you're out taking a walk or doing something completely unrelated.
Those aha moments, they're the best, right? It's like our own personal residual thinking connections are firing away in the background.
Yeah.
I love how this research is giving us a whole new perspective on the power of our own minds.
And it's not just limited to work projects either. You can apply these principles to anything you're trying to learn. whether it's a new skill, a new language, even just deepening your understanding of a particular topic.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of information out there, we can take a cue from the ITT. Focus on those key concepts, those difficult tokens that will unlock that deeper level of understanding.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about being more efficient. It's about enjoying the process. When we feel like we have the tools, the strategies to tackle these complex challenges, learning becomes an adventure, you know, a journey of discovery.
This is starting to sound less like AI research and more like a blueprint for personal growth. It's really inspiring.
Okay.
But before we get too carried away, we have to address the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the robot in the room.
Oh, you mean the question of whether this smarter, more efficient AI is a good thing or something we should be wary of?
Exactly. I think it's important to acknowledge that with any kind of technological advancement, there are potential downsides. But that's a conversation for another deep dive. Right now, I think it's important to focus on the positive, the inspiring aspects of this research.
Agreed. We've got a lot to unpack here, and I think our listeners are eager to hear how this research can actually help them achieve their own goals and aspirations.
So we were talking about how the inner thinking transformer isn't just some cool new AI thing. It's actually a really good example of how we can all approach learning and solving problems better.
Yeah, it's a real mind shift. We often think more is better, right? More info, more hours, more tasks. But the ITT shows us that less can be more. It's about focusing on the things that matter.
Work smarter, not harder. We've all heard that one. But this actually gives us a real example of what that looks like in action.
And it's not just about what we can achieve individually. Imagine the impact on teams, organizations, even society as a whole, if we all learn to prioritize better, to really think deeply about the problems we face.
It's like the ITT is kind of jump-starting a whole new way of thinking, a smarter, more efficient approach to problem solving. That could help everybody.
A culture of deep thinking, valuing quality over quantity, and not being afraid to revisit those tough concepts until they really sink in.
It's like we're all becoming those inner thinking transformers, constantly learning and adapting.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe this research will lead to new tools that help us actually apply these principles. Imagine a personalized AI assistant that helps you figure out your own difficult tokens, the stuff that needs your full attention,
Whoa! Like a personal trainer for your brain.
helping you prioritize, strategize.
That's pretty amazing.
And it all comes back to this simple idea. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to just think harder about it.
So listeners, next time you're feeling overwhelmed,
By a huge task, tons of info.
remember the inner thinking transformer. Remember, it's not about brute force or how much you do. It's about where you focus your energy, revisiting those key concepts, taking a step back and really thinking about how you think.
It's about enjoying the process of learning, embracing the journey, the power of your own mind. Keep thinking deeply, stay curious, and never stop exploring.
That wraps up another deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring the inner thinking transformer with us and that you learned some inspiring lessons.
Keep those mental gears turning, everyone. See you next time.